A mother of three would die by drowning in the bathtub. At first, this looked like a tragic accident of a woman who drank too much, had taken pills, and decided to get in the bathtub. But later, police would uncover a sinister murder. This is the case of the Bathtub Girls. Linda Anderson had given birth to three children in Ontario. She had an older daughter, another middle daughter, and a son. Unfortunately, her husband had abandoned his family, and this meant Linda was going to support the children as a single mother. Unfortunately, the woman had suffered from dependency on alcohol and severe depression. Eventually, Linda Anderson would remarry, and she would marry a man who was convicted of drunk driving, and in 2001, he was convicted of domestic abuse. After her second husband left, her drinking got worse. Unfortunately, this meant that her daughters were taking on more household responsibilities. I do want to note, because of the Youth Criminal Justice Act, the names Linda, Sandra, Elizabeth, or Beth, and Bobby were names created by the journalist Bob Mitchell for the victim, her oldest daughter, her other daughter, and her son. So because of this law, the names couldn't be released, and you'll find out why soon enough. By 2002, it appeared that both teenage daughters really began to resent their mother and her drinking issues. It seemed that their mother, Linda, had continued to spend most of their money on alcohol, and the girls really wanted to have normal things that other teenagers had. Sandra, the oldest daughter, would later describe surviving a childhood of sexual abuse, which apparently went unreported, and it was by a priest whom she trusted and obviously told all of her childhood troubles to. She would say that her mother often drove drunk and never provided them with basic necessities. Sandra would also state that she tried but failed to report the abuse to Children's Aid Society. So instead of bearing the abuse, the girls decided it was time to kill their mother. So they began to search the internet for ways to kill her. For some reason, the teenage girls believed that if they killed their mother, they would be entitled to insurance money of about $133,000. They decided that money would be spent on a trip to Europe with their friends and that they would purchase a home. I do want to note that these are obviously two young girls, and really their line of thinking matches that of teenagers. I mean, they're talking about murdering their mother and what they're going to do with the life insurance policy, but they're not thinking about the consequences or really what that entails. The girls would decide to drown their mother because they believed it would, quote, be fast and unspectacular. So they would formulate this murder plan, and apparently they informed three of their friends who encouraged the sisters to do so. Again, I just can't believe that they would tell three other people and then these three people didn't say, hey, that's just a really bad idea, don't murder your mother. Instead, they encouraged it. Their mother was about 43 or 44 years old at the time, and it's said that she was an X-ray technologist, but nobody really knows where she was employed because, again, this law, the Youth Criminal Justice Act, is meant to protect the privacy of the young offenders. On January 18, 2003, during lunchtime, the girls began by giving their mother liquor in order to get her drunk. Their plan was to get her so drunk that when they put her in the bathtub, she couldn't resist or fight back. They would also give their mother 6 Tylenol 3 tablets, which contained codeine, to slow down her heart. This murder was meant to look like an accident, like their mother was a drunk who took a bunch of drugs, got in the bathtub, and drowned on her own. Sandra and Beth would fill the family bathtub with water and then take Linda to the bathroom. By this point, Linda had difficulty getting into the bathtub because of that mixture. So Sandra and Beth would put gloves on and give their mother a massage. Sandra would instruct her mother to lie on her stomach so that she could scrub her back. And when she did so, Sandra would push her mother's head down and not let go. After 4 minutes, their mother was dead. After killing their mother, the girls went to a nearby restaurant with their friends where they created an alibi and celebrated the murder. When they met with their friends around 7 p.m. that night, the girls did tell their friends that they had killed their mother. The girls would later return home around 10:30 p.m. and call 911. They would tell police that they had left the house around 6 p.m. when their mother was drunk and about to take a bath. Of course, the case was determined to be an accidental drowning, secondary to alcohol intoxication. A forensic toxologist testified that Anderson had 5 times the legal blood alcohol level for driving in her system and 3 times the safe level of codeine in her blood when she died. So the girls would live with an aunt, and their 3-year-old brother at the time would live with other family members. And a life insurance company paid out $67,000 to their brother and $133,674 to the 2 girls. But 11 months after the murder, one of the girls would slip up at a party, and she would tell a boy that her and her sister had killed their mother. This boy would go to the police officer, and he would tell them that one of the girls confessed to him at a party that she and her sister had killed their mother. So the police would ask him to be wired and go and talk to the girl. And he would talk to the girls about the details of their murder for over a month. The Bathtub Girls were arrested on January 21st, 2004. And although they were placed in separate youth correctional centers, they were later placed under house arrest, and both sisters had made taped confessions of the crime, which were of course used as evidence in the trial. But police did have a computer that was seized from the girls' residence, and they found chat messages regarding the planning and the enactment of the murder. There was also searches for information about the effects of mixing alcohol and Tylenol prior to the murder. Both sisters were tried beginning in November 2005 and found guilty of first-degree murder, and they were both sentenced to 10 years in prison for first-degree murder, the maximum for a youth sentence. The 10 years consisted of 6 years in custody and 4 years under community supervision. If the 2 girls had been tried as adults, they would have received life sentences. The judge, Justice Bruce Duncan, stated that the girls had grown up in a poor, depressing, and degrading home atmosphere, even though their mother had earned a good income. He said they were not able to empathize that their mother was absent a lot because she worked double shifts, was often exhausted, and drank to self-medicate. Beth's boyfriend was also convicted for conspiring to murder their mother and covering up the crime, and they found chat logs between him and the sisters to prove this. It turns out that he also provided about 5 Tylenol 3 pills for the murder. He was found guilty, and although he was originally sentenced to 18 months, he only received 8 months in prison, followed by 4 months under supervision. Because they received youth sentences, the goal was obviously to try to rehabilitate the sisters and give them a chance at a normal life. The older sister, Sandra, was released to a halfway house in 2009, while the younger sister, Beth, was released a year later. By 2020, it was reported that Sandra had graduated from university and became a scientist, while Beth was married, became a mother, and graduated from law school. It does appear to pass the bar in Ontario, individuals are required to be, quote, of good character, and they have to report all criminal proceedings to the Law Society of Ontario, which would eventually result in a hearing to determine if they meet ethical and professional standards. So I think the question and the debate among this murder is if, one, the girls really did it because they were in an abusive environment or because they were just greedy and wanted the money. I mean, this was a very prepared and planned murder. It was premeditated for sure. And I understand growing up with alcoholic family members, as I am a product of that environment, it does really emotionally and mentally, and oftentimes there's a lot of physical abuse. It does wear down on you, and it does make you a shell of a person. But it really seems that these girls lacked any sort of empathy, any sort of, I don't know, just idea of what they were doing. They just did not care about their mother. You know, they put gloves on, they told her to turn over, and then they just drowned her. I mean, there's something really sinister about this. But the other end of the debate is these girls had just had enough, you know, that the abuse was too much, and they just decided to stop the abuse, to kill their mother. I would really like to know your guys' thought on this case. It's just something about this really kind of gives me chills. I know that they grew up in somewhat of an abusive environment, but to me, it doesn't seem like that was the reason for the murder. But I'd love to know your thoughts on this case. Did they commit the murder to stop abuse, or were there other sinister motives involved? But that's it for today, guys. If you like this video or any other video on my channel, be sure to subscribe and turn on alerts so you never miss video upload. I'll be back next week with another video, and I'll see you then.